right? So serverless computing, the name says it is serverless, but in fact, the reality is servers are definitely needed for all your application. The server will be managed by the provider. So here in our case, Microsoft is the provider. So they are going to manage all the server related activities. So either it is patching or the physical or the virtual machine, the compute environment will be managed by the provider. So this does not mean they don't have server CPU memory. So they definitely have CPU server, CPU memory, network, and all the required components for your application. So we don't manage those server hardware and its component. It is on demand. You are getting it on demand, and you are going to focus on your application and not on the infra. So that is what serverless here really refers to. So serverless has been evolving, and the very important thing behind serverless is that, see, many organizations are migrating towards cloud. And then when they are just doing a rehosting, so for example, they have an on-premises VMware VM, and then they are just migrating to Azure VM, then they are not realizing the full benefits or the functionalities of the cloud platform. They are just rehosting it, and they are just continuing to do the same patching activities and backup, monitoring, and all those stuffs for your underlying virtual machine and operating system plus the application. So the overhead is still there. Okay, and the pricing benefits or cost optimization cannot be really realized when you are still continuing to have the same infrastructure as a service component. So how do we get out of it, or what are the options that are available? See, if your application cannot be modernized, you still have options to run those application on the app services, or you can have the different environment created on app services platform, which is platform as a service. And you can also have your databases on Azure SQL database. Again, that is a platform as a service, database as a service. So you can use these in between platform as a service option to run your application. But if your application could be containerized, or if your application can be executed in a script or a function, you can also go for function as a service. So there are some new trends and stuff that are available based on the last 10 years of software development cycle evolution. So software developers have changed the way that they are creating the application these days. Right? Earlier, it used to be a single product for the entire application business requirement. So they create the business application aligned to all the requirement in a single thing. But now, even if you take Netflix or any online or any recently brought in application, they are all developing their application as microservices. So when you say microservices, so let's say you have a lot of, you are logging into Flipkart or Amazon and these kind of sites, right? So what they generally do is they understand what are the different components that could be segregated from one another, and like for example, each and every functionality here. So login authentication system is a separate functionality, and vendor management or cart management is a separate functionality. Product management is a separate functionality. So what they generally go and do is they start developing each of these business functions into a microservices, and they can also, yeah, microservices. Let me show you how it looks like for some of the, yeah, this is pretty much a direct example for the e-commerce site, right? So I was just showing you that the e-commerce site might have some inventory, account management, shopping management, cart management. So they will try and split those business application into function, and each function will be created as a separate microservice. And these microservices need not run on each and every separate operating system or server. They can be created as a container, and they can be hosted on a Docker platform or a Kubernetes platform, and you can have its own independent database. And again, when it comes to database, they can use relational database or NoSQL database or any different caching mechanisms to fulfill those database requirements, because these days we have a lot of varieties like graph database, and wide ranges of options are available. So everything could be either created as a platform as a service, or you can also have it as a container as a service, or if there is some scheduled activity or some one-time job that needs to be executed on a regular basis, you can go for Azure Functions and function as a service. So this is evolving. So earlier people were migrating towards cloud just as an infrastructure as a service. Then they realized that the cost benefits are better in the architecture where we have platform as a service and in some cases function or container as a service. So all these are more categorized into platform as a service, but people might call it with some fancy names, but all of these are coming under the platform as a service category, either database as a service or container as a service or function as a service. They are part of your platform as a service. So the idea behind serverless computing is to focus more on your application functionalities and features and don't have to worry about the underlying infrastructure, the server. So that is the intention. So here you get a lot of features and options, products and services, and you have before cloud you have to be focusing on all the different aspects of the physical servers, operating system, the virtualization layer, the applications, the coding and everything, right? So now you really have to focus only on a portion of it, like if it is platform as a service, we just have to worry about the monitoring of your application layer, the business functionalities, and then try to focus more on the application, and you can have less focus on your infrastructure where the infrastructure management is taken care directly by Microsoft. They are focusing more on those layers and trying to bring in availability, scalability and security and so on. So no servers to provision from our behalf. So Microsoft is provisioning the number of servers we need for our application. So auto scaling is enabled by default. So based on the use consumption, based on the network load and other metrics which we have configured. So the virtual machine scale set, the auto scaling will take care of adding more servers and reducing the servers based on the actual demand. And you are just paying for what is the consumption at any point of time, right? You are not over provisioning it, or you are not having performance issues here, because serverless, the scalability, the flexibility, the security, the availability, fault tolerance, all these things are taken care by Microsoft, and we just have to focus and run our application. So availability is the main concern in general in your on-premises, and capacity, of course, will be a challenge if there is a huge growth pattern. But in the cloud, you really don't have to worry. You get everything in with better latency, throughput, and you get with highest amount of availability possible. And durability is also pretty much good here on the cloud. So serverless architecture is very much useful for many of the modern application and the applications which could be modernized. So that we just have to take care of the applications, and in the traditional world, we have to take care of a lot of different underlying components. So there are many different products that are under compute, storage, API, and so on. So this is how it looks like when you want to develop your application with serverless architecture. You go and select Azure Web Application, Azure SQL Database, Azure Blob Storage, Azure Redis Cache, Azure Queue Storage. So these are all the different products that we choose instead of going with having separate servers for application layer, database layer, caching layer. So it is no more the requirement. So everything, every functionality can be picked and choose as a product from the Azure product listing. And for storage or caching or queuing or function as a service, you just have to go and select the right product for the architecture and you go and deploy it. So that is how things are getting transformed or modernized these days, right? So yeah, function as serverless, there are many benefits. So of course, DevOps or SRE strategy is mainly inclining towards using platform as a service or serverless. So that way we have the right sized environment, and the scalability and time to market is much better. Okay, Azure App Service. Azure App Service is going to be platform as a service where, as a customer, we just have to focus on the application, the access privileges to this application, and whatever the data that the application has got, the code and the plugins and other stuff. Only that is the part that we have to maintain as a customer. And Azure App Services, last week when we were in a discussion, I showed you how to create an app service. But now we need to understand what are the different pricing tier plans that are available, and what are the different options we could do when it comes to integration to DevOps or some kind of tool chain. We will also understand how we can have continuous integration and continuous deployment, because app services has got a lot of integration with GitHub and whatever the tools that you want to use. Like you can also use GitLab or maybe Bitbucket, Atlassian tools, or Jenkins. So there is a lot of integration option with the DevOps toolchain and framework. Okay, I'll show you how to create the app services. And before we go and create an app service or web application, we have to define what kind of compute platform we need, what kind of compute resources we need, because each application might have different type of requirement. Like some might be needing a lot of network bandwidth, some might need a lot of memory consumption for some processing and stuff. So each application is unique. So you might have to go and pick and choose what kind of resources you need for your app services as a plan first, and then that app services plan could be shared across multiple different app services. So I will just show you how to create the app services plan and then share it across multiple different app services or web application. See, the interesting part is like whenever you check for microservices, you could see that Netflix and some of these applications comes into the listing, right? See, for example, Netflix, you are using it at home, right? You might think that it is one single application, but in reality, Netflix has got Netflix number of microservices. So it is more than 1,000 business functionality or 1,000 microservices that make up that one single application Netflix. So there is a lot of business functions within that. So everything is split into as much as small units. So there is a lot of use cases and articles behind different customer application, how they have split up into multiple microservices. So Netflix has got 1,000 plus microservices. Okay, so each and every small component they have developed into a unique application or unique service. So now coming to the app services plan, I will show you how to get the plan created and then how to leverage that plan across multiple different web applications. So that is something I will just quickly show you as a demo. First, go and create an app services plan. Okay, so the app services plans are available for production as well as for the development environment as well as for the mission critical environment. So this is where you go and select what kind of scalability you want, what are the instance sizes you want, and what is the environment you are targeting to run on this particular app services plan. So app services plan has got a lot of options, a lot of flexibility to choose from. So if you go here, there is a pricing plan that is available, and under the pricing plan, you will see a lot of different hardware options and feature options. So based on your requirement, for example, if you want to consume a certain amount of virtual CPU, like in your VMware environment or Hyper-V environment, we go and specify virtual CPU, right, which is the equivalent to your physical CPU. It depends on what hardware you are using. If hyper-threading or any similar technologies are involved, configured, then it all depends on the threads and the level of CPU options you have got. But Azure also provides you something very similar called Azure Compute Unit. So if you are going for the basic free options, you will get only the Azure Compute Unit. You will not get the complete virtual CPU equivalent. But if you are going for higher premium tier, you will get virtual CPUs and the memory configuration. See, by default, they are choosing something like the basic options, the premium options here. So you've also got a free tier, which you can use for playing around and learning this thing. But if you have some fund or if you want to create some basic options and for less demanding workload, you can go for free or basic. But for production category, you have to go for premium. And for some of the organization or some of the customer environment, they might also ask for completely isolated network also. So if that is the case, then there is a plan called isolated network, which you can choose under the premium category. And see the standard or the cost-effective ones. And I mean, when I say cost-effective ones, under the production category, standard or cost-effective, but under the development and testing, free and basic options are there. Even some premium options are there with specific processor type, which can help you to lower the cost. See, there are for the premium options, you can see there is a VNet integration and zone redundancy option. So if you really need your application to be zone redundant and if you want to have your own virtual network, you can go and have the premium category. So now let me just show you this. So let me close this. So here under the zone redundancy option, you can go and choose the plans which are having a zone redundancy. That way, if your application is a critical one, you can go and deploy it in multiple different um, zone. And here also you can go and choose what kind of network options you want. Let me just give it some name. Then I will just say stand. This is the plan we are creating. Okay, we are not creating any app services as of now. First, we have to create the plan. So you can also create the plan along with the app services creation. So here is where we decide whether you want to run Linux workloads or Windows workload as part of this plan. And here is where you go and choose the location where you want to run. I will just choose EQS. Okay, and here is where you can go and choose the pricing option. See, if you want to have less cost and you just want to understand how this works, you can just go for pre or basic, or I think for me standard is also fine. I can just go with standard. See, there are certain limitation when it comes to standard. They are giving you only one virtual CPU and 100 Azure compute unit, and memory is 1.75, and the deployment slot that you can have is maximum of 10. The instance that could be scaled is maximum of 10, and there are some limitations on the deployment environment also. See, some application might need QA1, QA2, UAT1, UAT2, and they might have more than 10, 15 deployment slot. If your application is having more number of environment, then go and check how many environment you need, and then based on that, you can come and choose. Here I'm just going for the standard option. So I think that should be good for me for this particular demo. I can just go for the standard option. It provides you 1.75 and it doesn't give you the zone redundancy. That's fine for now. Let me go and create the plan. And once after the plan is created, this plan could be shared across multiple applications. So you can go and create multiple web applications or multiple applications using that plan and leverage them. So this is the plan that you are choosing. It is like by buying a hosting here or maybe some um, virtual server providers are providing you the plan, right? You will just go and select the plan, and within that you will run multiple instances of web applications, and it could be for just website or mobile backend or RESTful API. So it provides you complete HTTP based interface or service. So you just have to develop the application code and whatever the enterprise grade uh, features that you need, like monitoring, a backup, or the scalability options. So all these are taken care as a service, and you can also go and choose the operating system of your choice, and whatever, for example, if you are choosing Windows, the IaaS, the web service, right, the web layer gets pre-installed and you get it as a service. So customer doesn't need to take care of the compute infra, the operating system, the database, etc. You don't have to manage the middleware as well. You just have to build and deploy your applications on this particular platform. And when it comes to security, of course, they are providing you options to integrate TLS or SSL certificate. And when it comes to authentication, you can integrate with Active Directory or Microsoft Entra. And when it comes to scalability, you have options to have integration with load balancing, traffic manager, and when it comes to tool chain, you can integrate with Azure DevOps, or if you have some package manager or tools, you can also have it. And when it comes to your domain, you can have your own domain name. They also provide default domain name. You can also purchase whatever domain you want through this particular portal, and you can use custom domain. And also you can have multiple different deployment environment like dev, QA, test, pre-prod, production, and so on. And DevOps integration, GitHub or Git Server or Visual Studio works beautifully with the app services. You can directly deploy something from the Visual Studio console. It has got a direct integration to here. And when you are talking about the programming language of these applications, you name it, I think whatever the top standard applications, you can create those, use those programming languages to develop those applications, whether it is .NET or Java or Ruby or Node.js, Python, Go, PHP. So all these popular programming languages are supported. If you are developing your application using those programming languages, you can come and run it here. So there are certain limitations, I would say, like we have created a Linux plan now. Okay, it clearly says this app services for Linux. And similarly, I can just go and create one more plan for Windows. Okay, that way you will understand where exactly the differences are. I can just say scan Windows App Services Plan 01, and this time I'm choosing Windows, and I will choose the location. I will go with instruments, and I will go with standard again. I don't want any high cost option. Review and create. Okay, so OS environment, you have option to choose between Windows and Linux, and also, I mean, when it comes to integration from your developer workstation or developer laptop, they can use any integrated development environment. Either it is, I mean, primarily Visual Studio Code could also be used, and if they are using Eclipse or IntelliJ IDEA, so if it is for Java application, they primarily go and use Eclipse or IntelliJ IDEA, right? So they can also use whatever integration development environment of their choice, and they have option to integrate with this Azure plan or Azure App Services. So let me go to the resource now. And within this resource, you can also go and start creating the applications or applications here, the web application or whatever mobile application or whatever you want. And you have the option to go and configure your own networking and create your own VNet and subnet. And you can also have private access through your VPN or direct connect to your on-premises database. They also provide you all those integration. You can also configure the file system. Azure Blob or Azure file shares could be configured, integrated. So you can go and see what are the different applications running here. So when you want to create some web application, so you have to go for Azure App Services. So using this Azure App Services, you can go and create the web application. So this is the platform where you go and build, deploy, and manage powerful web application, mobile application, and API application. So these are the different programming languages that are supported. Let me just go and create one. Let's get started. I will create one here. So you can create a web application or a static web application. You can also go and create something like a web application with database, or if you want to get a template like WordPress or something Ruby Rails or some template, you can also get those templates. So let me create a web application first, and then see like what are the different options it provides to us, and we can move on with the other options. So these are also meeting all the security compliance and standards like HIPAA, ISO, or PCI. All these standards are met. So let me go and give it a name, Stand Web App 01. So when it comes to runtime stack, right? So here is where the difference will be. So let's say I'm just choosing Ruby, okay? Ruby, let's say .NET Core. Okay. Let's see what plan is selected below. Okay, it's new plan. Okay, so let me just okay, it says Linux plan. Okay, see, this is how it's different when you're choosing a particular runtime stack. It automatically chooses that. I have to choose the East US location. So now I will have the option to go and choose the existing plan. See, there are two plans, right? So this is the Linux server plan that we have, and then if I want to go and choose the runtime stack, say let's say I want to run ASP.NET, this one, it will automatically change to Windows. See, it all depends on what programming languages you are choosing. If it is Python or .NET or some specific flavor, automatically it will pick and choose the Linux. So now if I go here, it will automatically show me the Linux plan. Sorry, Windows plan, because I have chosen the Windows operating system here. Because the runtime stack is Windows based, I will get this thing here. So let me go and run a particular app service as an example. See, it is also giving me unique default host name, as well as it is giving me a domain name. I could also go and purchase the domain and deploy it here. And if I have an existing Jenkins pipeline or any existing GitHub, I can also go and integrate that with my GitHub. I will also show you how to do that. Maybe let me just select it. So if I have an account, I can also go and choose that GitHub account. And whatever repository you have, you can also go and choose this. I've got a lot of GitHub content. Maybe let me just choose something and then see if it works. Yeah. So let me click on next. So here is where you can enable public access, and even if you want to do some network injection or testing, you can also use the second option, but it is not preferred. And you can also go and configure the auto scaling if you want to configure auto scaling, and if you want to configure monitoring and any integration with tools like Defender and all, you can also do it. So remember last week when we were talking about monitoring, the application insights gave you a beautiful visualization dashboard, right? If you want to enable application insight, you can also enable it. And if you want to enable the Defender solution for your app service from Microsoft, you can also install it. That comes at an additional cost, and you can review and create it. Now I have just created it. Let's see the web app, and then I'll show you what are the different options you get once after the web application is created. So what kind of control you have. So you also have option to go and check the processes, do a lot of troubleshooting. So even though it is application as a service, you still have a lot of control. You still have access to the logs, the events, the application specific processes, and a lot of information will still be available. I'll show you those quickly now. And you also have option to go and configure backup. If you want to configure app services backup on a particular frequency and you want to configure the retention, that option is pretty much available. I'll show you once this is done, and let me. So there are multiple options. So currently I went for automated deployment, but if you want to go with manual deployment also, you can go with manual deployment. Let me create one more. So that way you understand the manual deployment as well. So let me go and create a static web app. I will just go with the manual deployment, and web app 002. Standard is fine. So if you have some hobby or personal project, you can also go and choose the free hosting plan. And if you have stored it in GitHub, you can also select it. Or if I want to go with the free or hobby plan, I can just go here. And then again, it is asking me to integrate with my repository. So no, I will just show you the option without the integration. Yeah, let me show you something without integration here. So it is creating a regional separator also here. That is another beautiful thing, but I just will go with these tools. And one more important thing, you also have the option to have your application as a container also. It is not just application as a service, even you can have a container apps here hosted on Azure Web App. So I can choose whatever flavor you want. Maybe this will go, let's say Python. And this time it is giving me only Linux option because it is not providing native support here, and automatically it is choosing the Linux plan that we have created. And you can also go and configure the network you want, and then continuous deployment I can disable it. Okay, and then I can review and create it. So it's not mandatory to go with continuous deployment or automated deployment. Automated deployment is really needed when your DevOps culture insists on continuous integration and deployment. That is the process where you can push all the new features or bug fixes in a very fast and repetitive manner, right? With very, very minimal impact to the end users or the application. So Azure does support automated or continuous integration and continuous deployment directly from multiple different sources like Bitbucket or GitHub or GitLab. Many different sources are supported. Even Azure DevOps, it works perfectly fine with app services. Azure has got their own native pipeline and Azure DevOps toolchain, right? It works very well. And manual deployment, of course, there will be some level of manual deployment work, but continuous integration could be done, and continuous deployment can be replaced by manual deployment also, if in case you need to have some control on the delivery process at the later end of the DevOps toolchain. So just give me a second, and once I have this, I will just go and show you the demo. So now I've got a couple of web application up and running. Okay, they also give you option to go and quickly restore if something happens or some accidental deletion are going on in your environment. So let me go inside it, and I will show you the options that we have got. So as I told you, the basic options for the administrator, like configuring the backup or doing some changing the domain name. So all those options are available here. So you can go and configure the backup as the Azure administrator. You can go and say what frequency, how long retention, and all those things could be configured. This is an automated solution which could be just configured, and you can keep going. And you can also go and purchase a custom domain if you want for your app services. They are giving you buy app services domain name option, or if you have an existing custom domain, you can come and configure it like your own custom domain. And if you have existing certificate, also you can come and integrate it. And when it comes to integration, you can also configure permission through Microsoft Entra or on-premises Active Directory. You have the option to go and configure the scale up and the scale out. Both vertical scaling is also supported. Horizontal scaling is also supported. Vertical scaling is manual. You go and select a higher plan. So currently I'm having standard plan. If I want to go with some standard S3 or premium, then based on the choice of yours, sometimes the downtime will be very less if you're going within that same category. If you're going from standard to premium, of course the hardware and stuff will be different, so the downtime is a little higher. So your application will go down when you're doing the scale up. This is the vertical scaling, and horizontal scaling could be automatically configured, and you can give a dynamic limit. Okay, what is the maximum you want to have? And if you want to have MySQL or some backend database, you can also connect it with your database here. And if you have some applications which is running on software as a service, you can also integrate with them, because like your application might connect with some payment portal or other external interface which could be configured. And here is where you go and configure how many deployment slot you want, whether you want multiple environment like dev, QA, and test, production, and so on. You can come and create as many number of deployment environment, and you can also integrate with your deployment center like Visual Studio or a different tool chain with DevOps. So you have option to go and create as many slot as you want, and based on the plan, it will allow you to create the number of slot you need. So for each of your environment. So coming to the options that I told you, right? Unlike your on-premises, you have a lot of options that comes very handy here. So load testing or some of the development activity that you want to do can be done here within the console. So you don't have to go and edit something using a local tool also. So if I go and open the editor, they give me the option to come and change certain things here itself. Let me see what exact content is coming up here on this particular website, and then I will show you how to change and see what is being changed. Okay, so this is the web service, the default page. So for example, I want to change these things, right? So I'm going to the editor here, and then I will show you how to edit it. So you don't have a local integrated development environment for every single changes. Even you can just change it here on the console itself. So this is what I have got here, right? Let's see, go and just check where exactly this line is. Yeah, here it is, right? So what I will do is I will try to change or is it the title or okay, content, right? Let me just see, this will be auto save now. Let me go and check. Yeah, so it works, right? So you can just go and edit the content or the pages here. They give you integrated editors and extensions, and there are tools. Okay, when I say tools, it's not basic tools. Okay, they give you complete coverage in this Kudo environment. So this Kudo environment gives you a complete visibility on what are the different processes that are running on your environment, what are the different handles that are there, and where exactly the bottleneck is. They give you tools like to generate the diagnostic dump, and if there is a support team who was asking for the dump, you can come and generate the dump here. You have the option to go and push the updates here. If you want to upload some files or some scripts, you can also get those done here. So they are giving you the complete visibility on the appropriate processes, not all of them. So here we are using Microsoft underlying OS, right? So they are for that OS, IIS is the default web application that gets installed, Internet Information Services. So you can also collect specific events about the W3 web processing, World Wide Web processing, and you can also start profiling it, look at the properties, and there is a lot of information that is available for your environment. If I go here, It gives you the complete system information. What is the operating system? Where is the working directory? How much is the current usage? And what is the path? What is the app services, connection string, whether it has got some backend databases, and all, I mean, whatever you think, all these options are pretty much given here for your quick view. And if you want to go and change some settings or configurations or make some environment variables, you have the options to go and change it. You also get access through the command line and the PowerShell. So that itself clearly gives you an indication that whatever changes you want to make inside that particular operating system could be done through script, right? If you have a good experience in working on command line and PowerShell, you can just do whatever you want in the app services. Even though it is platform as a service, they give you access to that particular server through the PowerShell or the command line interface, where you can just go and upload some of the scripts and do some execution or do some customization here, and whatever we did, right? For example, I think the content will be here, right, under the www root. So this is the file, right? And if I want to edit something here, I can also go and do it. I think it's the edit command in Windows. I'm not pretty sure. Yeah, looks like it is. Yeah, I think there is text or some type command. Yeah, if it is Linux, I think we can go and edit the file using VI. So here, not sure if Notepad will work, or else I think Node should Visual Studio Code, right? Yeah, Node should work. The command line to edit the file in Windows. Okay, so anyway, so this is if you have if you know how to work on PowerShell or command line on Windows PowerShell, you can just go and edit it here also. But that is really not needed because they give you integrated editing environment. So they have given you the app services editor plane where you can just go and change what you want. Right, so here they give you a lot of information to debug and look at the processes, generate some dump, create some webhook, or create a support ticket. So all these things are available. Even you can go and add some extensions to your application from the site extensions or from the gallery. You have a lot of tools that you could add, and even if you want to generate some specific New Relic agent, or if you want to install some application performance agent, you can also go and add those extensions. That way you will get additional metrics and you can go and configure a lot of traces and so on. So even though it is platform as a service, you get a lot of handy options. You can also clone your application if you want to create a copy in a different region or a different environment. You get a lot of options to manage it from your console. There is a separate option, even though there is a separate option within the app services advanced tool. They also give you option to come and edit it from the command line here. I'm not pretty sure whether it is edit or something. Okay, fine. I'll explore that later. So what else? So yeah, you get a lot of metrics here. You can configure monitoring, and as we saw last week during the monitoring class, you can go and create beautiful dashboards from within the console here, and you can also check the different logs that are coming out of your application services. See, the infrastructure, the OS, you don't have to really worry about because they are taken care by Microsoft here. So you really don't have to get inside the OS level logs and infrastructure issues. So those will be taken care by them. But if you know that the problem is at their level, you can just raise a ticket and get that sorted out. And here you can go and get all the logs for your application at various levels, warning or verbose or detailed log. And this is where you get them. You can also get them stored into your SAEM solution, or you can store it in Azure log. So pretty much there are many options that you can explore. As an administrator, I think these are all more than sufficient, and you just have to generally you will attach some certificate or configure some domain, you will configure some backup, or you will integrate authentication. This is where Azure admin tasks will be, but in reality, if you have some application that has been developed, so they will come and deploy it through the deployment slot. So the application team will create as many slots as they want, and they will push the code into the development environment first, and then they will test it. They will do some quality testing, QA environment, and then they will push it to the production environment stage by stage. So pretty much this is how you can work with the application services. So first you have to create a plan, then you can go and deploy the application based on your requirement. They provide you both custom auto scaling and manual scaling options are there, and you also have the options to go and select whichever programming languages of your choice. And you can put it as a container, or you can also have it as an application code. Continuous deployment is pretty much supported using Jenkins or GitHub or any tools of your choice, and there are different plans that you have to have. So backup option. Now I think I'll take 5 to 10 minutes extra, okay, and then we will wind up. I know we are on at the end of the hour. So similar to app services, Microsoft also provides you options to run your applications as a container. If your development team has created your application as a container, they provide Docker as a service as well as Kubernetes as a service. You know, Docker is the container platform and Kubernetes is the container orchestration platform, right? Both of them are available as a service. So what Microsoft has done is, instead of, if you want to run your container application on the VM, you have to go and install the VM, the operating system, and then install Docker and then run the container there. Instead of doing all those additional overhead, they are providing option as a container as a service, where you can go and choose Azure Container Instance or Azure Kubernetes Service. If your applications are more scattered and if you want to have Kubernetes control plane, you can also have AKS, but Microsoft also provides you container as a service with Azure Container Service. If it is a few number of containers, of course you can just go and run them on Azure Container Instance, or if there is a lot of containers involved, you can go into the Kubernetes platform. So you know the advantage of containers, right? So containers, it is not going to have a separate operating system every time. It can run in a shared operating system or in a shared platform. So virtualization, you know, like each and every virtual machine need to have its own operating system, its own operation system management, configuration, and so on. But here, the underlying operating system is being shared across multiple containers, and you know the advantages of running the containers. So virtual machine, you have to have, for example, 100 applications, and for 100 applications, you need to have 100 virtual machines. So here it is not the case. If you have 100 applications and it's all containerized, you can run it on 10 VMs or 10 shared operating systems. And that's the way the container platform is like Docker, or you can use a lot of different competitors like Podman, and even there are native services available. And when it comes to virtualization, you know, hypervisors like VMware, Hyper-V, and KVM, there are many different providers that are available. So comparing the containers and virtual machine, containers are very lightweight in nature. It doesn't need to have a separate operating system for it. But if in case you need to have for some specific limitation, you can also have a separate operating system. But in most of the case, your applications will have only the application code plus the runtime environment plus the additional libraries and tools in that container. It will not have the complete operating system. The complete operating system kernel or the libraries which are shared across multiple applications, they will be picked from the base operating system from your base VM, right? So deployment is pretty much easy. You can integrate with a lot of DevOps toolchain and also manage it via Docker or Kubernetes command line. So you can also use Azure Disk or Azure File Shares as a persistent storage for your containers, and they also provide you high availability at for your ACI Azure Container Instance, and even for Azure Kubernetes instance. High availability, scalability, security, and redundancy are all taken care by Microsoft. You have to just take care of container as a service, and with virtual machine, you have the overhead of managing and maintaining your operating system also. So that is where the additional overhead is, and you have to pay for the license, and the costing and other things are pretty much high here. And So Azure Container Instance, it comes under the platform as a service category. It is container as a service. They are providing Docker VMs as a service. So on the Docker VM, you can go and have as many number of containers for your applications or web servers here, and they also provide you public access. Directly you can integrate it to the internet and have DNS name configured, and the time it takes for booting, right? The underlying OS is not going to reboot or start, so it is going to be running, always running there. Only the application container has to come online. So the underlying storage or the underlying operating system can be chosen. So same like your app service, you can go and choose whether you want a Linux underlying hardware or Windows underlying hardware. So let me show you this. So this is what is happening, right? So Docker, if you have to install it on your Azure VM, you have to go and install the Docker server, and then it will also have Docker command, which is the Docker client. You can connect and work on those Docker environment. But here, all this overhead is completely taken care of. So you whatever the containers that you have on your Docker Hub or Azure Container Registry, you can pull those images and run it on your container instance. That is the only thing you have to do. So as a developer will check in the application code onto the Docker Hub or Azure Container Registry. From that registry, the images will be pulled upon onto your Azure Container Instance, and they will start running as a container here. So it is very easy for the development team. So as a developer, you have to have a very strong knowledge, but I'll also share some detailed information about the Azure Container Instance and as well as the Azure Kubernetes. So if you guys already have good amount of knowledge on Docker and Kubernetes, you can start directly working on it. See, for example, Azure VM, right? So I'm not sure how many of them are having real knowledge about hypervisor or virtualization environment. But still, they are supporting those Azure VM, assuming that everything under the infrastructure or the base hypervisor, it will continuously be available. So that's the assumption they are taking, and they are supporting it. Similarly, so you do not really need to have the Kubernetes or the Docker knowledge. You can directly come and work on this, but I would recommend to have some level of basic knowledge on what is Kubernetes, what is Docker, and then understand it. And then because there is a lot of component involved. When it comes to Kubernetes, it has its own networking layer, storage layer. It has got a lot of options and stuff to go and select from. So I would have always prefer to go and have some basic knowledge and then come and manage it here. So this is the platform, right? So for running your application as a container, instead of running as an application. So if you're running it as an application, then you can run it on Azure VM or Azure App Service. But if your application is capable of containerization, if your application is already containerized, you have the option to choose between Azure Container Instance if it is based on the Docker platform. But if you want to run it on a if you want to run it on a Kubernetes platform, you can also run it here. So they provide it as a service. So they provide container platform as well as the orchestration platform. So Kubernetes is like your vCenter, right? So where when you have multiple virtual machines, you have to manage the scaling, you have to manage the resource planning, the resource sharing and all, permissions and everything. So similarly here, Kubernetes is an orchestration platform which can manage multiple container applications from one single glass of pane. So it gives you the complete option to scale, to do integration to your DevOps tool chain, authentication, and if you want to have Helm integration for continuous changes. So all these things can be managed. So you are just going to pay for only the number of container nodes you are going to use as part of this particular thing. So there are certain terminologies that comes from the Kubernetes world. They call it as node and then group of containers. Even if it is single container in Kubernetes, they call it as pod. Even if it is group of containers, they call it as pod, right? So pod is a group of container, and generally we deploy it as a infrastructure as a code using YAML, or you can also use Helm chart to deploy your containers, and they run it on a clustered node here. So Kubernetes has the clustering option by default. So you'll have multiple nodes, and you don't have to really worry about the master and worker level of information because that is taken care by Microsoft here. But if you are going to run it on your own environment, then of course you need to understand how the master works, what is their role, how the worker nodes will perform, how the integration works and so on. But here, as a customer, we just have to worry about the availability of your containers, and then what kind of schedule you want to run it, and you just have to take care of the container layer here. So with that, I think there is a small step-by-step demo I have shared. You can just try to create some default Azure container instance and just practice it. So that way you'll get to understand. Maybe I mean, it will not take more than 2 minutes. I will just show you how to create it. So go to Azure container instance. So this is the equivalent of your Docker as a service. Go to container instances. You can create a container instance. And for which, like, you can also go and purchase the app services plan if you want. And while purchasing the app services plan, you have to select I'm going to run containers or the code, right? So if you have selected code, it will not work here. If you have selected container, then it will work here. Just say span container 001, and then this should be fine. This is fine. Quick start image. Region is fine. So let me go and click next, and then create it. Public is fine. Okay, and I'll show you what level of options you get here. So that way you will understand the simplicity of containerized environment. Okay, let this get submitted. I will create one more Linux one. So the image that you are using to run the container instance, it has, this time I have fetched it from the Microsoft Container Registry. You can also pick it from Docker Hub or Azure Container Registry. So here I will just say scan container 002. So here is where I go and choose it. So if I look at this option, MCR means Microsoft Container Registry.microsoft.com. So if I want to choose it from something else, I can also go and choose it. So I have the option to select the source as Docker Hub or your Azure Container Registry. So let me, this is last time I chosen this web server, right? I'll go with Linux just for a difference. See, you know the Linux Alpine operating system, right? So Alpine operating system is the smallest operating system in the internet, right? If you go to the Docker Hub, you will understand. So this is where you can also copy the image. Okay, so like instead of mcr.microsoft.com, you can also pull the images from hub.docker.com. So let me show you this. See, these container images are very, very small. And if I just go and select one of the image here, see the Alpine image size. Okay, let me show you that. Size of Alpine Linux image, 5 MB, right? So that is the complete size of your operating system. So Alpine Linux is the smallest Linux distribution, which will still have some tools and BusyBox package inside it, and you can use it for your container. So it will have its own independent Linux operating system with just 5 MB of size, and compare it with Red Hat or Ubuntu, they will have 200 MB minimum, and it might go up to couple of GBs also, right? So this is a kind of small flavor. So that is what the option that we are choosing here. So this is a Nginx web server built on top of Alpine. So overall, the size of this might be like just the entire container and the entire image along with the operating system will be 10 to 15 MB only. Okay, so that small it is, and you can just quickly create it in a matter of minutes. So you can you can choose the image from these locations also. For example, if I want to use this image, I just have to copy the location and I can pull it from here. Or else if I go to the tag, there also you will get the link on how to pull that image. So we just click on this version. It will just show me the link here. So I just have to copy the link and then just pull it from here. So let me just show you some more options. So here, once the instance is created, you might think that container cannot be managed remotely, right? That might be the assumption, but in reality, even you can connect to the container instance via the command line, or you can still run a couple of shell scripts and so on. And even though it is very tiny in nature, still there are a lot of options to play around with container instance, or even with AKS. You still have a lot of options. I will quickly show you this. So I think the very first one should be already ready. So if I go to the first one, it is already running, and I can just copy this Oh, okay. The first one was also Linux. I've chosen Linux. I did not realize that I thought it's Windows. Okay, so let me just enter it here. So it will have a default container application. Okay, it's still loading possibly. It's running. Okay, instant account. Okay, CPU, memory, it's there. So let me show you how to connect to this. Okay, just now it's completed. Fine. So if I go to the settings, I have the container here. And if I go to the connect option, I will still be able to connect to that instance, right? So it is asking me which one. I will just go with the shell. That should be simplified. Yeah, see, it gives me the shell option. I can just go and check what is the host name. Okay, it says a small server, right? Let me just give ls, and then see, it is showing me the list of files and stuff. Even though it is a container, I still have option to connect it via the bash shell or the shell, and even I get the number of logs here. So it is still open for the port 80. It is listening. So ideally, it should open now. It says open, and if it is open, then of course I should be able to connect to it. So in the log, I will be able to see like who are all connecting, and I can look at the properties, which port is open, and all those things. So it is a basic hello world, right? It should open. Maybe let me check the other one as well. I'm not sure what is this one. Pretty much this looks the same. Let me just go and try it. It will take a couple of minutes to show up. Yeah, here I can just come and check the status. Here the logs will be there. Okay, still no more logs. Go and connect to it. Same. So I can also go and get inside that. For example, where exactly will the file be? I think last time we had a right? Okay, says you are the same. No, it is not Apache. Maybe there's something, some other file. Okay, you can come and pretty much edit it here. Okay, that's what I'm trying to convey. You can go to the EDC and configure something, or if you want to do some changes to your website, you can also do it. Okay, so here it uses the